Welcome to TheoTrade. This is Don Kaufman. May 3rd, 2021. Just minutes to go to the cash close here on this Monday afternoon. We're seeing some sell-side activity inside of the broader marketplace, but specifically, it's all about the Nasdaq right now, which is actually dragging the S&Ps down into the close. Yeah, the S&Ps are still up a whopping 7 points. But hey, listen, when you're talking about a $4,200 product, the S&Ps being up 7 is, for the same part, massively unchanged. Nevertheless, okay, very large part, it is Amazon and it is Tesla that is actually dragging this marketplace underwater. And you got to kind of ask the question, is that going to be a sign of much more things to come in terms of sell-side activity in this broader marketplace? With that, let's get to work. There's a couple of really key points to be made inside of some of the trade that we've seen today, outside the fact that, yeah, you know, you've got Amazon down. Yes, you've got Tesla down, okay? But what has me watching the screens more than anything? Well, let me actually bring you into scope on that. First and foremost, we start with the advanced decline line. Now, if you've been watching advanced decline line with me week in and week out, you know that I look for a high correlation coefficient. And what that effectively means is you look for instance, almost all stocks trading on one side or the other of the S&P 100. What we would determine as high correlation, for example, would be like 90 stocks trading to the upside, of course, 10 to the downside. And people, that's exactly what we saw at this morning's opening bell. And again, correlation has only kind of reared its ugly head very, very briefly in some of the recent trade. So we see a really high correlation coefficient this morning, and that was, I mean, listen, financials were up. The energy sector was flying this morning. The energy sector continues to fly. The monsters of tech had a strong bid, and then effectively everything changed. So the reason I'm bringing this into scope is this morning, it wasn't the old same rotation game that we've seen as of late. When I talk about the rotation game, it's, you know, all of a sudden we're into financials, we're out of technology, we're, you know, out of the financials into tech and vice versa, pretty consistently here. And ironically, that's some of the same trade that you're seeing right now. Nevertheless, this morning, it was all engines go to the upside. And the irony is, look how we're finishing the day with the S&Ps for the most part almost unchanged over here, and the Nasdaq actually being dragged down by a full 0.5%. But there's a lot more, again, kind of that meets the eye. If we cruise over once again to the charts, and we're actually going to look specifically this time at the bond market. The bond market had some big reactions to numbers that came out early in the trading session. Now, the bonds, they didn't necessarily see quite as much volume, okay, as they typically do, and that's because some of the European markets were actually closed for their version of Labor Day today, so maybe a little bit less volume. But okay, it was some of, again, the economic news that actually broke during the trading session. Now, there was PMI numbers, there was ISM numbers, but the one that actually moved the bonds, okay, and actually moved the marketplace was a construction spending number, and it missed. So what you had is the bonds spiked to the upside. You're like, whatever, man, I don't trade the bonds, okay? That's fine. But the bonds, I'm going to tell you, this is something you will want to key into through the remainder of this week. This bond market absolutely unequivocally moved the S&Ps and it shifted the Nasdaq, okay, and took out a lot of retail traders in the midst. And when I say that, I mean, hey, listen, if you got caught in the crossfire of this as the bonds rocketed to the upside, look what occurred at the exact same moment inside of, again, the Nasdaq, which initially actually spiked, then faded right along with that bond product. And again, almost moving, and there's the closing bell, almost moving in a perfect kind of one-for-one fashion, except the sell-side activity apparently did not stop inside of the Nasdaq at the exact same time that we saw the impact in the Nasdaq. And we also saw it inside of the financials. The financials saw some wicked sell-side activity hit in a very similar time fashion. Again, the bonds being kind of that key driver behind it. Watch them throughout the course of this week. The bonds, okay, still in a fairly, you know, muted range. Again, you know, if you look back a couple of months, you see this dramatic move to the downside. All of a sudden, we actually catch all the way down to, like, you know, that 153 handle. We pick back up to the 158 handle. Again, we're in a tight range. But people, this is a fairly substantial move inside of the bond markets today. Again, we are on bond watch for the remainder of this week, as it is, again, it's going to be a substantial market mover. All right, moving onward and upward. Obviously, one of the stocks that we want to key into is going to be Amazon. We'll come to Tesla here momentarily, but in Amazon. The reason that we actually bring Amazon into scope, not just because it had sell-side activity, okay, but it's only, well, literally like, kind of a day removed, if you will, from its earnings, hitting an all-time high at the 35.54, and then a complete and total reversal off of that. Now, it is absolutely not necessarily over and done with inside of Amazon. Okay, but for those of you that are a little bit of market technicians out here, which is most definitively not me, some people are going to start to talk about, a top possibly being in place. These people talk about double tops, triple bottoms. Well, in this case, it's a triple top and the possibility of more sell-side activity. In this particular case, when you start to see some sell-side activity, again, I'm less inclined to look at the technicals. That's not me. I'm a very quantitative trader. So what are the aspects I would look at? Well, first, I would actually look at this implied volatility. All right, and this implied volatility range, and what we're effectively looking at here is IV ranking. Now, there's nothing necessarily in the IV rank that stands out, but it is, okay, current IV percentile is like 25%. How does that compare to like other tech stocks? You could bring up stuff like Microsoft, okay? Microsoft, look, 0 percentile, which means like Microsoft, this is like its lowest instance of implied volatility. Take a look at Apple. Now, we all know that Apple's got some fairly substantial news, as there's a big case, being tried right now, with Apple and Epic. Nevertheless, 0 percentile. Okay, take a look at Facebook. Facebook lately has been rocking out there. 0 percentile. Okay, and yet we bring up Amazon, and again, this stands out. So the implied volatility ain't as low as you had originally thought. The activity inside of the options, well, this is a relatively slow day, but it was still rocking out there. It did about 120% of its normal daily option volume versus the previous 5 days. Now, it's like, oh, whatever, man, it's 120%. Yes, but it just came out of earnings last week, which means that the volume, okay, was fairly substantial. In this particular case, yeah, I would say that the option activity inside of Amazon is in the big leagues. It is absolutely in the big leagues. This is something to be watched. The volume in there is still, fairly catastrophic size, if you will, inside of Amazon right now. Any continued sell-side activity should see a spike in implied volatility as well. Again, more of an indication of risk. But be on the lookout for Amazon, because clearly this can have a broader impact in terms of the Nasdaq. The other player on the day is none other than Tesla. Now, this particular move in Tesla doesn't look much in terms of charts, doesn't look much in terms of volume. What do the option markets effectively say about it? Its implied volatility is not effectively picking up, and its option volume is rather light. Again, the option volume is rather light versus the previous 5 days, only doing about 80% of its normal daily option volume versus the previous 5 days. It too, of course, had came off some of the earnings. So Amazon is definitely on the radar screen. Tesla, not so much. Okay, Tesla on a day-to-day basis just sees substantial moves. To see a 3.5% move to the downside, yeah, sure, drag the Nasdaq, but I wouldn't read into this one any deeper than we just did. Again, look at the surface of it. People are going to try to point out technicals and it breaking down. Absolutely not, because if it was, you would see some size trade in here. Last but definitely not least, let's give a quick mention to the micro Bitcoin futures that were launched by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange today. Now, this is a product that I kind of discussed briefly that could be a bit of a game changer for not only Bitcoin, but crypto in general. Today was the official launch. Now, one of the things that I would love to display to you is simply this. Look at the volume out there. That is dismal for a product being launched. 6,754 contracts. What gives? As I had mentioned, that this could be a big game changer, except that there is absolutely unequivocally a huge issue with trading this particular product. Take a quick glance. If I click on the ask, I'll go over here to confirm and send. All right, so what's the problem in here? It's not the buying power effect. Okay, my commissions, well, I happen to have a negotiated commission rate, so let's just block that out. The entire problem exists right here. Those that are active traders may have actually picked up on this today. That fee of $2.52, that is representative of an exchange fee, which makes this entire product, people, it's a complete and utter non-starter. It's a non-starter, becomes kind of a moot point. So, hey, Welcome to the marketplace. Micro Bitcoin futures. We will never trade you because you are looking at $2.52 on the way in, $2.52 on the way out. People, that's just fees plus your commissions in there. Nevertheless, again, we're looking for some substantial moves inside of the S&Ps throughout the course of this week. So stay tuned, and again, watch the bonds. They're going to be shifting those S&Ps throughout the course of this week. Thanks for watching TheoTrade. Have a wonderful afternoon.